morning, people. Live, in person, physical people. I can't tell you how exciting it is to be here this morning with you. I'm Debbie Am, the Client Officer at Ipsos. We're a global full-service market research agency. And I'm here to tell you a little bit more today. It ties in with what Alistair's taken you through in terms of e-commerce and the changing consumer behavior that you've seen. It ties in with what Nitin will take you through afterwards, as well as some of the following presentations this morning. But looking a little bit more in this instance at general trends in the marketplace around consumer behavior, and it literally is just a taste of what is out there. If we look at the evolving African consumer, you'll have heard us all speak by the end of today about the impacts of the pandemic on the way we engage with the world today. We've probably seen some of the most accelerated change that we've seen in recent history over the last 3 years. And consumers are out there going, what next? Does it continue to change? Does it go back to what it was before? Will there be what everybody's talking about in terms of a new normal? And how do we then engage with that change? So Ipsos has a framework that we work with where we look at long-term macro forces that are impacting the world around us today. We look at medium-term signals, and we look at short-term shifts in behavior. So today, while our macro forces in South Africa and the rest of Africa are very similar to those around the globe, what I want to take you through is a couple of those shifts or signals that we see out there that might be able to help you engage with your consumers at the end of the day from an organizational brand and advertising perspective. If we think about those broad macro elements, they're things that you will have noticed yourselves. The geopolitical tension that Alistair referred to when he did his introduction, the changing population dynamics that we see, particularly in Africa, because a lot of that is different from the rest of the world. If you look at elements of environmentalism and sustainability, if we look at the impact of price and economic issues on the world around us today, on the whole issue of big data, and on the use of technology to support us as life has changed over the last 3 years. So what is it that's impacting us going forward, and what do we need to take advantage of as advertisers today? Well, one of those things is that Africans see themselves, we see ourselves as Africans of the world. Not only are we intensely proud of the countries that we live in, or the countries that we hail from, we are also increasingly seeing ourselves as feeling more like citizens of the world than citizens of our own countries. So how are we then able to engage with that to make sure we tap into that from an advertising perspective? We are modern and agile, and that is something that a lot of organizations forget, I think, when they're dealing with with the African continent, and particularly the southernmost tip of Africa. We see ourselves as being the first amongst our friends to engage with anything new. That's our own perception of ourselves. We've also become used to, if we look at how businesses have adapted over the last 2 years, 3 years, with the impact of the pandemic, evolving, being entrepreneurial, taking on things that we didn't really think we would do before, so that we can adjust to the environment that we see ourselves in. This is something that means that we are also very happy to embrace change. So our consumers are expecting us to engage with them in a way that is connected, that taps into that African soul, that understands that we're modern and agile, that brings brands to us that we can rely on, that are trustworthy, reputable, relevant, that we can connect with in a personalized way, whether it's online or not. And those are elements that we would then need to tap into as organizations, brands, and advertisers when we're wanting to engage with our consumer base. We see globalization as good for our countries. A lot of this, you'll see the scores for Nigeria and Kenya are much higher than for South Africa, but they've seen the concrete benefits of China's infrastructural investments in their countries, the consumers, the population has. This also then starts to talk to, Alistair alluded to Google's investment in Africa, and we know that we've got the much anticipated undersea cable coming our way. That has benefits from a general perspective in terms of our perceptions of globalization and how that benefits our countries and ourselves. It also has a big impact in terms of individual consumers, in terms of accessibility and how they're able to engage with technology going forward, and the online environments that they are increasingly shopping in, which talks to the fact that we really are increasingly dependent on the internet. So we ask the question in a very different way, but I cannot imagine life without the internet. And almost 70% plus of our population are saying that that's how they feel. They're increasingly connected consumers. Their worlds revolve around what they're able to do online in different aspects of their journey through what they might want to do online, whether it's education, whether it's around communication, whether it's entertainment, whether it's shopping. More and more shoppers are relying during the discovery phase of their shopper journey on the online environments. You'll see it's still about a 50-50 split with in-store and online, but it's growing over time. So we need to take into account how we engage with that online behavior and consider what the expectations are of brands in that online exploration, especially if we consider that most shoppers, in South Africa it's 80%, make their purchase decision before arriving at the store. So they're using whatever communication they're seeing, whatever interaction or engagement they're having with a brand prior to walking in store to make their purchase decision. And how does that then impact with how you engage with them? In addition to that, we need to consider the fact that we're increasingly concerned about the inflationary pressures that we're facing. You all know it's not a bed of roses out there. We've seen the impact of the war in the Ukraine on the prices that we face every day. We're concerned about the fact that our incomes aren't increasing at the same rate as the prices that we're having to pay for goods. So it's not just about how you communicate. There is a pricing element involved in being able to sell, whether it's in an in-store environment or online, that we do need to consider. And our shoppers have changed their behavior to try and mitigate the impact of this inflationary pressure that they're experiencing. So that then again is something that needs to be taken into account in how you engage with these consumers. They tend to be more likely to shop around. Remember I said they make their purchase decision before they arrive in store, and more than half of that is being made in an online environment. They're shopping around to look at what's out there. They're looking for deals and coupons and any way to increase the value that they're able to engage or to achieve from their transactions and interactions. And in some instances, they'll hold off buying a product until they know that they're in a position to be able to afford it. We see 67% of our South African consumers tapping into savings just to survive. So for those big purchases, they're needing to delay that decision. But what, again, is the impact for you? Really, what does it mean for organizations, brands, and advertisers? It means that we have increasingly connected consumers. We've seen that through the earlier presentations. You'll see that coming up in the subsequent presentations once I'm done. And we need to build and expand on our online presence more than ever before. It means that we need to ensure that our online presence is tapping into the soul of the African consumer. So are we able to offer personalization? Are we able to engage with issues like sustainability and privacy in a way that means something to an African soul, not just a global soul? Are we able to offer them brands that they believe are reputable and relevant and trustworthy in a way that engages with the purchase decision that they're making? And then can we create that link between this dichotomy of wanting to be fiercely local and proudly African, but also needing to feel like I'm a citizen of the world and not being left behind? So how do we tap into that intention? And finally, the need to support the consumer needs at the discovery phase of the shopper journey, because that's where they're making their purchase decision before they're even making it into a store. So those are all things that you would need to take into account as you're engaging and connecting with your consumer. That's me, short and sweet. Just a little touch of what the trends are that we're seeing in the global environment today. Alistair's spoken about how the consumer is changing from an e-commerce perspective. I've spoken a little bit, given you a hint about how the consumer behavior is changing from a brand requirement perspective and how they're engaging with their worlds. Nitin is going to take you through how they, as Google, or how Google is engaging and what there's on offer from a sub-Saharan African perspective in terms of going forward. Thank you.